and thank you for joining us. My name is Rowena Waters. I think everybody here, we're all friends, so we all know each other. Okay, now I am the chair of the Philippine-American Chamber of Commerce, DFW, which is region number 1. We are a state chamber with 4 regions: Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston, Rio Grande Valley, and San Antonio. This project is for DFW. Now, let me acknowledge some of the members who are here. I am sure others will be joining us. We have our founders, Ethel Mercado and Gus Mercado. They have been with us, and they are the soul, the heart and the soul of our organization statewide. And then we have board members, of course, Laura will be moderating. There's Melissa, Jill, let me see who else is here. Jill Lasaka, and then Mirna, who's our past chair. And then we are helped by, and also Arlene. Hello, Arlene.
Hello.
Obar. And then we are also helped by April, who is helping back us up. Okay, now other members will be joining in, and other board members, and some from other regions as well. And then we have guests. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Now, our event tonight is the 4th in a series of webinars that we have been hosting since the beginning of the pandemic. As you know, we used to have in-person networking events, which were very successful, but after COVID, we've had to change and turn everything online. So this is the 4th, and I think we're getting the hang of it. And we are also recording and posting our events into YouTube. And this includes the one that we have tonight. Now, one of the blessings we've had in this at this time is that we've had a series of really great speakers. And I am very grateful. Tonight we have Bri Crow, and I'm so happy that you're here, Bri. Now, before I turn this over to Laura, who'll be moderating our event tonight, she'll be introducing our speaker and then moderating. I'd like to give you a series of announcements, the first one of which is our website, www.pacctxdfw.com. Now, it is almost done. It's about 90% done. But you can also look at it now, and I would like for you to look at the roster. The roster will also list our members. And we have business members and we have individual members. Now, if you are a business, take a look at it. You need to send us your logo and your website. If you are an individual, send us your headshot and your social media page. You can send it to me, or you can send it right there you can send it through send us a message on our Facebook page, or to info@pacctxdfw.com. If you have any questions, send us a message on our Facebook page, our name, of course. And then also 2 other things. One is make sure you respond to the census. And number 2, make sure you register to vote. Now, our community needs to be counted. We need to be counted, and we need to make sure that our voices are heard. So please make sure you get that done. Okay, now I think we have all those announcements in place. So I am going to turn this over to our wonderful moderator, Laura Tamayo. Take it away, Laura.
Hey guys, it's so good to see your faces. I wish we could be in person, but hey, I'm still very happy to be able to connect with you guys here. I'm so glad you guys made it. I am excited to actually tell you about Bri. Bri and I have met, I guess, several years ago at, I believe, actually, I saw her speaking, and then we reconnected through Dallas Startup Week a couple years later. And I'm just really excited to have her here because I think her background is something that can really be very beneficial to all of us. First of all, she is a veteran of the recruiting and staffing industry. So she has a lot of really wonderful information to share in terms of how to make a good impression. And I love her perspective, because her perspective is very much about helping employers be the best employers they can be. So she can help small businesses understand how to hire, and large businesses. She's worked with both. So it's not just about the job seeker, but those of you that are business owners, which are quite a few people in the Filipino community. really give you some support for understanding how to be that great employer. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about image, which actually that recruiting experience, believe it or not, I think comes into play. But I also think that she can give us a lot of help with our online, all of a sudden online life, because she also happens to be a photojournalist. She is a graduate of Texas Tech with a BA in mass communication. So she has just the right experience to actually help us understand how to make that professional impression now that we're having to live so much of our life online. She's been very involved in the startup community. She's been on the founding team of a cybersecurity company named Zyton. She's also founded the Women's Technology Coalition, I believe that's right, and been featured in Dallas Innovates. So she is someone that's very well connected to our business community, and I know that she's going to be able to give us some really great insights. Thank you so much for being here, Bri, and I am going to hand it over to you. If you guys have questions, just either pop it in the chat or give a wave, and we will make sure those questions get asked as we go.
Yes, you are far too kind, Laura. It's this is the beauty of when you do have those in-person events, being able to reconnect with people who you may not be talking to every month, but we saw each other. It was probably years in between, and we were like, "Wait a second, you look familiar." So I'm grateful we reconnected, and I'm excited because I want to be involved in different chambers of commerce. Previously I'd been involved in like the Irving Chamber of Commerce, but now I live in Addison and have tried to go to chamber events here. And it's just so important. So I'm excited to be here. And I think the most important thing before I'll share my screen and I have some slides together. But I would love questions or specific scenarios that people may be going through. Especially if your brand is at a certain stage and you're looking for just be able to talk it out, then I would love to be able to go through that with you. But yeah, we'll be talking about digital presence. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And hopefully you can all see that. Let me see if I can, I'll do full screen, and that way, Laura, you can help me. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me if there are questions in the chat, because I can't see that when I'm in full screen mode. So definitely don't hesitate to interrupt me. But yeah, digital presence is open 24/7. It never does sleep, much like I'm sure keeps us all up at night. Laura already shared a little bit about me, but I wanted to go ahead and put all of the different logos for my different businesses and projects in one here. And believe it or not, actually my bricrow.co, that my name there is actually written. I used an iPad and just that's my own handwriting and had it inverted and put into white. And Human Dimensions is the talent acquisition and recruiting agency that she mentioned. I've been in specifically technical recruiting, helping technology businesses and technology CIOs and CTOs hire for their team. And so I also, over the course of that time, saw a lot of ways that could be improved in terms of how people hire. Hiring managers don't get trained on how to be a hiring manager and just get tasked with interviewing, and candidates aren't looked at holistically as a human being when they're being recruited. So that's what I'm really passionate about. Humans are multidimensional, so is our process in helping you hire, is what that is all about. And local and thriving is kind of my COVID baby. I, had an idea at the end of 2019. Things were absolutely insanely busy in a beautiful way. And then when it all came to a screeching halt in March, I was like, no better time than to experiment, and worked on building that brand. And so it's a video series and a podcast that is really focused on an inclusive economy and conversations with business owners and ecosystem leaders. So maybe that's community groups like Laura and Rowena, who run communities in the local area, as well as subject matter experts. Those are the guests. And so had one season down, kind of two seasons, because I started in a different variation, but very passionate about that. And you can see the ties of inclusivity between those two already. But that's also what Women's Technology Coalition was about. I don't come from a technology background. I'm not a developer, I'm not an engineer, but I'm really passionate about everyone understanding technology on a deeper layer. Digital transformation is leaving no one behind. And I would hear all the time from women, oh, well, I'm not in IT, so I'm not sure if it makes sense for me to come to an event. And, I was like, whether you're in finance, you're doing queries, if you're in marketing, you're doing automation, a ton of analytics, and so really just encouraging more and more folks to understand and explore technology further. And so that's a community I started in 2017. Love our in-person events. We've done a couple of virtual since COVID times have entered, but love that group. And then Bri Crow Creative Studios is kind of my newest one because I'm also a photographer. I went to school for photojournalism, but when I graduated, wasn't taught how to make money with a degree like that. It was kind of like, you've graduated, best of luck. And so that's how I got into tech recruiting. And that's what I've been doing for the last 9 or 10 years. And photography's been a hobby. And now, being self employed, I've been building these businesses over the last 2 years. And so it's been really exciting to actually turn that into something that pays the bills, rather than the hobby. So, another reason that I put all of these together, and honestly, it was kind of cool for me to see because I haven't put them all on one slide together, was I've really been challenged by my own mentors and the brand design people that I know and have enlisted to help me to look at consistency and recognizing, okay, yes, these are different businesses, but do you see a common theme amongst them to where if someone just encounters one, but they already know you from something else, would they make the connection? And that was really tough for me because I like a lot of different stuff, like a lot of different stuff. So putting me consistently into one color scheme or one font style and things like that, it was tough for me. But this kind of shows that I've tried to focus on that, especially over the last year or two, bringing them all together. So that's a long story short. But I want to first talk about really everything that I had learned was that authenticity wins. And from a recruiting perspective, I can tell when someone's lying to me. Yes, I do feel like I have maybe a heightened perspective because my job in recruiting a lot of times is to be a human lie detector, right? I mean, that's not the only thing, and that's more of a negative connotation. But when you're trying to understand someone's skill set and what they're passionate about, what their goals are, really being able to make sure that I know what they're looking for. And I would come across people all the time that would be yes men or yes women. Oh, yes, I've worked with that for 2 years. Oh, yes, I've worked with that. Absolutely. Oh, I can do that. And the reality was I would then still have to keep asking questions to really understand. I just need to know the barriers, though. Like, there's got to be something, excuse me, there's got to be something that you either haven't worked with, aren't familiar with, or possibly don't even want to work with, like a tool or a technology. Like, you would hate to go and work in a Salesforce environment, which is a technology that maybe some of you use for your businesses. And so I was really trying to pull them out and say, it's okay if you haven't worked with everything. I would really rather know where you feel like you can come in and make an impact within the first month and the first 3 months. And then I need to know what's going to take you 6 months or maybe even a year to ramp up and really understand. Like, if someone comes to you on day 2 asking you a question about what you just said you've worked with, are you going to be able to answer the question? And so for me, that was being authentic and being okay with saying, I haven't had a chance to work with that, but here's a tool that was something familiar or maybe similar that I can share about, and going into that conversation. Because candidates, or should I say hiring managers, and those of you who are hiring managers on the call right now, definitely add your opinion in the chat, please. I would really love to be able to hear your perspective on this. Tell me if it's true or false that when you are interviewing someone, you aren't necessarily as focused on getting the right answer, like the specific right answer. You're actually more interested in the fact of their decision making skills. How are they going to go about solving a problem or overcoming a challenge that they encounter? And getting candidates to understand that helps them relax and actually be authentic in their answer and saying, you're asking about that technology. I don't think I'm very familiar with that, but what I do when I come across something that I'm not sure about is I love GitHub, or I actually love and subscribe to this user group that's around this technology, and there's a lot of people in there that I communicate with. So I normally would bring that problem to the user group and see if they could help me come up with a solution, right? Now you as the hiring manager understand how are they going to go about solving a problem, and they have that resource. And the candidate is also being honest about where what it would go, what they would have to do in order to overcome the challenge. So I'm curious if you, as hiring managers, agree that it's not always necessarily about one specific set answer that you're looking for, and that you really do want them to be authentic and show you how they were coming across an answer or a solution. The other piece is when it comes to imagery and your brand online being authentic as well. And if a candidate has never interviewed with you, then all they're looking at is your online website and your brand. Maybe you specifically, as the hiring manager, I send every candidate who goes through an interview with one of my clients the LinkedIn profile of the hiring manager and anybody else who may be interviewing with them. So that might be their first introduction. So, how is your LinkedIn profile looking as the business owner or as the hiring manager? Same thing goes for the candidate. When you're evaluating the candidate, maybe you're going to their LinkedIn profile. And if they see if they see your website and there's something that seems maybe really stark, or you know they're going to be telling themselves a story about the company or potentially you before they're getting to speak with you. And so what is that representing and telling them about this upcoming interview, about this upcoming client call maybe? And so that's where I think authenticity on your website is really important. And I can tell you a direct story about this. As a photographer, was a client of mine that is a healthcare provider. They have multiple medical offices throughout DFW, and they decided this year to, instead of using stock photography for their new website, to hire a photographer um, to come in and do the photo shoots of their physicians in the doctor's offices. So I went to 5 different doctor's offices, photographed the actual waiting rooms, the physicians in a room where we've gone through all of the um, um, agreements. Everyone had to sign the release to make sure that we could do this, obviously. But fake patients and real physicians in a real waiting room that one of these patients would actually potentially be entering, right? And then they said, we also want to do all of our headshots for all of our physicians, 100 physicians getting headshots done. So for them, that was a massive step, because they were like, in the medical field, you can so easily tell stock imagery because they all not most of them are all going to look the same, and you may have the same images as all of your competitors, right? And they do have competitors in the medical field. Hospitals compete against each other, and especially specialists compete against each other. Very much so, kind of unknown to me, but for them, they invested in that heavily, and they wanted to own the copyrights and represent themselves authentically as medical providers on their website and on their cards. So,
For you. So I'm wondering, in terms of, you're talking about using actual pictures rather than stock photography. And I think that's an important point for us to pause on for a second. Because I know a lot of people are having to build up this online presence that they weren't having to build up before. What's more advisable, do you think, if you don't have great equipment to take pictures, to go ahead and put pictures that are of you and of your business, even if they're not professional shots, or to have the more professional stock photography until you can hire a photographer? What do you think?
I mean, and I use stock photography myself. There's sometimes I just don't have a shot of something, right? And I still have to use it. The thing is, this this is just my opinion. Just don't use the photos within the first two results. Like the first two pages when you Google something, like go to the third page, fifth page, see what you're working with at that, and hope that that's not the first one when someone Googled local business. It's like local business owner, perfect, selected image, that's my local business owner, right? Because yeah, I think stock photography is not going anywhere, because they are so quality, and you do want to represent yourself well, and earn that trust. Whether you've got the budget or the equipment, just go a little bit deeper into the search results. um, yeah, and happy to go through anything else there as well. So let's see here if it'll let me. Wait, what's the. Well, why is it my arrows are now not letting me go to the next page? Oh, here we go. Invest in yourself every day. This was actually, I mean, this applies to so much, but I think that it's something that, like you mentioned, if you don't have the budget to invest in the images, or something like that, this was something a boss told me, probably in my second professional job ever. And he was like, think about how much time you spend in your business, working here. And I've applied it now as a business owner, but think of how much time you spend in that. And if you're not trying to actively practice and or get better, and you're just doing, you don't necessarily get to evolve. And if anyone's heard of James Clear, I think his book right now is just like going wild. So I would not be surprised if some of you are familiar with Atomic Habits, by James Clear. And he talks about just getting 1% better every single day. And I can take this so far in my own brain. I took this so far, invest in yourself every day, as to doing time lapses of meetings that I would have or presentations that I had. So for me, that was content. For me, investing in myself every day, I was like, I need better and more consistent content that shows what I'm doing and where I'm doing it, right? So I was like, okay, let me get this $20 window thing that clips onto a window at any given room and area. And I do time lapses of a meeting or a presentation. And then I use that as content to show what I'm doing. Right. And so that costs it costs $20, but that's not me paying someone to come and photograph and document what I'm doing, but it still provides me with something. So I think investing in yourself is either the books, and Half Price Books is a beautiful, beautiful place, or support our libraries, because I know they're absolutely, they're hurting too. But books and, something as simple as documenting what you're doing can be multi-purpose.
And where would people share that kind of content? Say they don't have like a YouTube channel. Is this something that you would want to put on your website, or where would you share a time lapse, for example, I don't know, 15-second something or other of you working? Where would you?
Yeah, so a time lapse, I'll share them on LinkedIn. And great example, I was a guest on a podcast, and I was like, hey, don't mind if I do a time lapse of it. And when the episode released, they didn't have a specific graphic or a specific audio sample for it, for example. So I posted the time lapse and announced that the episode was live and that you could check out the full conversation, right? So it's the attention getter with the text and or announcement. But then I repurposed that same time lapse. I put it on an Instagram story at one point. And then if you're on TikTok, you could put it on a TikTok for any reason, if there are any TikTok users here. And where else? Yeah, so it wouldn't be on my website. So it's a social media content aspect.
Got it.
So, and obviously none of these are absolutely mind-blowing things, right? Like you've heard of these things that I'm mentioning, that it's just what I've encountered. And This was a big one for me. This was a real game changer. And it's so simple, but your ideal customer may not be the one who's currently buying from you. And that took me a while to wrap my head around until I realized I could be making more money if I'm aiming not to sell to my friends and family and then their friends and family who know about me. I need to be selling to a specific audience, right? And there's maybe a specific buyer that is going to most need my services and is also buying at a different price point than the friends of a friend. As much as I love them, I'm also not trying to break their bank. So when it comes to your marketing, it's not like you want to exclude someone who's obviously currently buying from you, but if you're planning and trying to be strategic about it, really be thinking about the hobbies, the interests, the books, the locations at which they hang out of your ideal customer. And that may be places that you are not your ideal customer, and your friends are not your ideal customer, most likely. So taking that into consideration with how you represent yourself, and how you talk about your business, can be a game changer.
So, question, Bri. Well, we're talking about representing ourselves online, and you've mentioned LinkedIn a couple of times already. Um, and I'm actually kind of wondering, finding your ideal customer could potentially come from your activity on LinkedIn, even, I would think. Um, what are some tips that maybe we can get for the best way to present ourselves on LinkedIn? Like if you said, okay, these are the three things that absolutely must happen on your LinkedIn profile. What are those three things?
So, and I'm glad you mentioned this. Two of my close best friends told me, we were talking about this. They told me 2 days ago, they were on Sunday, they're terrified to post on LinkedIn. These are senior level professionals. They were like, "Oh, I'm absolutely intimidated to post on LinkedIn." I was totally shocked. I was like, "Is that why I never see anything from you?" I was like, "That's crazy." And they were both fearing being laid off. And so they were talking about it in that context of, um, I don't know if I'm going to get laid off, but I'm being told to hype up on my LinkedIn and I'm terrified to do so. And I was like, you're thinking it's a way more judgmental place than it actually is. I feel like, um, from what I mostly see, there's just mostly a lot of support. And you've got your little hype crew in some cases of people that want to support you. But the three things that I definitely recommend, and I'm no expert, there are definitely LinkedIn specific experts, but what I've learned from them is video content reigns king and queen for sure. Getting in front of a camera may seem tough, but let me tell you, you don't need a ring light and a full camera studio. You do need a window. Your camera with you looking at a window, beautiful natural light, there's your setup, right? And all you need to be sharing about is maybe your business is hosting some sort of webinar and or mixer, and sharing a little bit about what's going to happen in that webinar, and it could be 30 seconds long. So anything, I've posted things that have been as long as like 7 minutes on LinkedIn, but 3 minutes and under on LinkedIn, fantastic content as a video. And even if it's not you in front of the camera and you really absolutely refuse to get in front of a camera, do a motion graphic. So for me, for the podcast, I'll put a audio wave moving graphic um, attached to a still that says, here's the episode name, and who the guest is, but the actual motion, the graphic is motion. So if somebody's scrolling, they still may see that motion and get attracted to that post.
Right. So you want something that's moving so that it catches people's attention. But I think that one thing that you pointed out, I think it's important, I'd love for you to comment on, is that a lot of times when people are nervous about being active on LinkedIn, it's because perhaps they associate a lot more with social media. And we know that there's certain platforms where people can be pretty aggressive. Hello, Twitter, I'm thinking of you. So I think that it is kind of important to differentiate. I guess everything is social media to some degree because we are being social, we are online, but not all platforms have the same purpose and not all platforms have the same dynamics.
Yeah. LinkedIn for me is absolutely a place that, so one of my friends that I mentioned is terrified to post on LinkedIn. My advice to her was, okay, you're a senior account director for an advertising agency. You support multiple clients and their campaigns. You most likely know of trends specific to print mailers. So if you're doing a campaign for a specific brand and you're looking at sending out a mailer, you have a creative team that's designing that, and there's a bunch of legal jargon. Sharing an article that you have not written but that you read or you have seen and saying, hey, this is an important trend coming up. LinkedIn is a place to display your expertise and or your services, um, or tease people about your specific intellectual property, your specific methodology. You tease them on LinkedIn about, don't you want this proprietary knowledge from me? Great, pop over to my website. But when you do say pop over to my website, here's what I've learned on LinkedIn. I'm not going to say I have proof, but I continue to do it. I don't include the link in the post. You include the link in the comments. What I've heard about this is that LinkedIn obviously doesn't want their users to be hopping off the platform. So even though you might right click and open up a new tab, somehow the algorithm may go against you. So you want to put the link to your website or the link to your event registration in the comment section. So
Well, that's a good tip. And I think that also when people see that there's a comment on a post, they get more, I guess, maybe curious and they kind of look at it a little bit more. I'm
yeah.
also wondering on the profiles, because we are a community, you know, and the Philippine-American Chamber is a community that's been together for quite some time. And I think one way that we can support one another is the recommendations, right? Um, I don't know about you, but to me, the written recommendation always seems to pop more. You're a recruiter, correct me if I'm wrong, but just plus oneing different skills, that's okay. But a written recommendation when someone's actually willing to go out there and say, this is my name, this is my face, and I'm out loud saying to you that I think this person's great for this reason,
Mm-hmm.
more of an impact. And I think it's a good way that if I just we're all on LinkedIn supporting one another, we can really help each other gain, I
Those
guess.
recommendations are fantastic. I will also include them on submittals to clients when I'm sending a candidate, and on top of the summary that I'm sharing about why this candidate is great for the role, I'll also occasionally include a LinkedIn recommendation, especially if it's from a former boss or something like that. Yeah, so LinkedIn recommendations are definitely great. And there was something else. I lost my idea on it, but yes. On LinkedIn. Oh, that's what it was. I was going to say in the chat, I think it would be awesome. I would even love to know personally so I can go back and look when we're done. But maybe if you are a business owner, share some notes about who your ideal customer is. Like if you know specifically who's ideally buying from you, pop that into the chat, and that way make sure we all know who potentially could be sent your way, that's a good customer for you. I know y'all may already know that about each other, but I don't. So I'd love to hear about it.
And actually, we may not, because sometimes we do know each other's businesses, but we don't necessarily know each other's ideal customers. So yeah, you guys can jump in the chat and put that in there. I think that would be useful,
Yeah.
to connect with Bri, but also as a community for us to know that about one another.
Yep. Um, and this is this is a toughie. Keep it consistent is so much easier said than done. I have been really working on this, especially this year, and keeping it consistent. So, in terms of your words, like how you describe your services, and the personality that comes through on your website, on your blog, maybe on your social media posts, depending on if it's you personally versus your business. Um, but the colors, like I mentioned, I touched on when I was showing my different logos. A friend of mine was like, um, make sure you try to keep them all similar to each other. And I was like, they're different businesses. And she was like, yeah, but they roll all up underneath you. And And I was like, oh man, brutal. Okay, let me try and keep it that consistent. And then cadence. All the algorithms, from what I understand across every social media platform, favor and boost, boost, I'm going to say that lightly, consistency and a specific cadence. At least somebody's talked about posting twice a day, at least on Instagram. Easier said than done again, because that is a lot of content, but keeping that rather than going two posts in one day and then not posting for a week or two apparently kind of hurts your overall algorithm and how you're showing up in other people's feeds. That could be specific to Instagram, but I've noticed it on LinkedIn as well.
I think that consistency is something that we hear across the board, no matter how you're choosing your online presence. So even if you're just posting once a week somewhere, it's better to post more once a week than to, like we said, post twice in one day and then nothing for 2 weeks and then 5 times in a week. And so it gives you um, more visibility in the sense that you'll come up on people's feeds consistently.
Well, and LinkedIn will favor you as a content creator, for example. I'll get more views on all my posts if I post, at least every other day. I probably don't ever post more than that, but I definitely get far more traction without changing what I'm posting by posting more regularly, for sure.
Yeah, and I think
So,
that I just want to pause for a moment here because I know that maybe a lot of folks are not accustomed to having to think about posting and being active online or being consistent online because it's just not how you've worked. But I guess I personally see it's not really very different from what your marketing efforts were before, but instead of live, now you've got to put them on the internet, right? So just the same way that you would have your regular flyers and promotions, or you consistently would have special offerings, or show up to specific networking events. I think the same thing needs to happen. We just have to do it.
yes. Well, and everyone going virtual now, I think that's why maybe this topic got brought up, is because of COVID and everything having to go virtual. That means all of the businesses that didn't used to have a website, all of your competitors that didn't used to have a website because they did so much in-person stuff, most likely now has a website, most likely now has some sort of online presence. And so being able to amp up your visibility and stand out, I think is now really important, to stand out above the noise, which we're all just doing our best. So do your best. And that leads me to, like I said, do your best, automating and scheduling. If someone could help me out with that too, that would be this is the stuff where, using a Hootsuite or a HubSpot or um, different, there's a couple of different Instagram apps that allow you to upload all of your content and schedule it out. There's Plann, Planolly. There's so many different ones. So doing this as much as you can is only going to take what feels like a headache is social media out of the equation a little bit. So happy to go into some tools specifically on this, but what are your thoughts, Laura?
I think that maybe we can have a different conversation for specific tools. But I think that if we could talk a little bit about just even just physical presence online, I think that would also be helpful. Because I think right now a lot of people are just really trying to get used to being on camera,
Yeah,
being on Zoom.
understandably. So let's talk about presence. Great example. This was this is a client of mine who they reached out to me and sent me this photo and said, "Hey, what can you do with this? It doesn't match any of the other content or imagery on the website, but this is the only shot we have of this doctor." And I went back and I tried to edit it as much as I can, but it wasn't a raw image, and so there's only so much you can do. Um, this was his new headshot that I did, and the difference of that represents him totally differently. So obviously it did take the investing, but at the same time, just along with the rest of their website, this is far more attuned to all of the other graphics and things like that that they have on their website and social media. So another example of this, this is my friend Sia. She has a fantastic podcast, by the way, called Innovation Calling, and they do some other amazing stuff. The one on the left was the first headshot that she sent me to be a guest on my podcast. And then the photo on the right is a photo I took of her as a headshot that she said, "Oh, actually, you know what? I sent you the wrong headshot. That's my old one. Here's the new one." And so the really, she looks great in both, but there's a little bit more distraction. There's a little bit more a casual approach. None of these things are bad, right? It really just depends on the moment, the event, and what you're looking to represent. Were you gonna say something, Laura?
Yeah, I was just gonna. I wanted to mention that one thing that I see in general between these two is being careful about backgrounds. When backgrounds are really busy, I think that rather than making it look more interesting, which I think sometimes either people don't think about it or they think they're trying to make it look more interesting, the busyness it gets distracting. And when you shrink it down into small screens, it actually looks cluttery and kind of messy. And so people kind of, their eyes don't want to go there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um,
Absolutely. That's a great point. This between this. Who's the where is the focus, in the image? Um, and so I didn't take either of these photos. This is my friend Nika. She's absolutely amazing. She's the managing director of the Small Business Innovation Center. Happy to share more about that, but anybody who's interested, they have a bunch of free resources, and I'm sure they'd love to work with the chamber, honestly, at some point. So if anything, happy to make that intro. But photo on the left was, I think, her LinkedIn headshot, and I took that and was going to use it, and then she sent me her photo on the right. When I talk about authenticity, the reason I included this, hopefully she doesn't kill me, is she's authentically on the left. She's authentically in the teal, right? And unfortunately, she doesn't feel comfortable on in the red, right? Like you can tell that's not totally her big bright smile representing herself. So as a photographer, when I say authenticity, that's an important piece of, it's not always critical of who you work with. I'm not saying you have to work with me, but I am saying try to figure out ways to make yourself laugh, or it's tough to get comfortable when there's a camera pointed at you, like that just is what it is. Everyone feels that way. Everyone feels that. I rarely have done a photo shoot with someone who didn't say, "Oh, I absolutely hate getting my photo taken." I'm like, I got you. We can make this normal. So I think that's, this is just kind of a lesson in both. There's the more professional picture, but on the left is her more authentically. Um, so I was going to include, this is, and I'm happy to send you this as an attachment if you want to share this with everybody. Not a problem. Moral of the story is make sure you feel good in what you're wearing. If you feel good, you'll look good. So that's first things first, truly. And I mean that. Because if you're uncomfortable and you don't feel good in what you're wearing, it really does show. But for men, so blue suits, absolutely fantastic. Try to avoid the is it hair bow? How do you pronounce it? Hair bowing or hair, like tight patterns, like busy. You know what I'm talking about. Herringbone, is that it?
yeah.
Herringbone.
Okay. um, so, try to avoid those when it comes to your suits. And it mentions charcoal gray. My absolute favorite suit color for headshots is navy. And when it comes to tie or no tie, I think the trend is more no tie as of right now. But that doesn't mean that someone's going to see a picture of you with a tie and be like, absolutely not. Just kind of as a trend right now, it's kind of a suit jacket with a button up approachability that people are going for these days. And for women, so jewel tones are your favorite friend. Black is one of my favorite colors, personally, on a normal day. I'm wearing yellow because if you noticed in the logos and everything like that, this is specific intentional branding effort. I'm in this for most events, virtual events, in person, and stuff like that. Um, but jewel tones are great. As much as I love wearing just black and white, like a black blazer and white shirt, I've actually tried to wear a little bit more of jewel tones in photos. Looks really great. Happy to go over any questions on this. Yeah, and again, the jewelry, try to keep it to where it's not distracting. And what else?
Bri, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Glasses, eyeglasses, especially online, I notice a glare.
Yeah.
And I know it's distracting. It's driving me crazy, but I have to read.
Yeah.
So how do I manage that?
So I always generally will take photos with their glasses on, and because I normally use natural light, I'm able to still get their eyes, in the photo. Like see here, so he doesn't have the reflection on her glasses, and that is the beautiful part of natural light. So maybe depending on the photographer that you go to work with, figuring out what they may use. But I normally take some with glasses on and some with them off. The one time I didn't, the one time I didn't, I have a photo shoot tomorrow to do photos of her with her glasses on because we didn't do any with them on. And she's been told now that you wear most of your glasses most of the time, and her boss wants her to get photos with her glasses on. I've never heard of that, but I was like, we can do that. So that's what we're doing tomorrow. So,
Bri, question
yeah.
or suggestion. This is Gus Mercado. For men, I what I do is, I still prefer executive business casual. If you're in a meeting, in a business meeting, and I take the cue from the CEOs of, Apple, Microsoft, all of those big guys. They're very casual, and
Mm-hmm.
yet they wear a jacket, just like Cesar Collada. That's perfectly okay.
Thank you,
Blue
guys. Thank
jeans. What
you.
do you think of blue jeans? I'm still uncomfortable, but I do it sometimes.
Yes.
What do you think, Bri?
Of wearing something more casual versus the executive look.
Well, Microsoft CEOs, Amazon, they wear blue jeans, and
Yeah.
I'm still uncomfortable with blue jeans, but I do it sometimes.
Yes. So I can relate that most closely to candidates when they're going in for an on-site or a final interview. And they're like, hey, the last interview that I went to at Amazon, the hiring manager told me if I came back in a suit again, then they were going to like make fun of me or, not be interested or something like that. Made a joke about having to come back casual for the next interview. And I was like, yeah, I was like, we don't show up casual to interviews. I was like, you know, and I think when it comes to your headshot, it is, I think it's more common with creative businesses to have a headshot of a CEO, no matter how big of the company, to have a headshot that may have a little bit more personality or is less traditional. If someone is a CIO or a CTO and you're selling to a CIO or a CTO, and that's who might be looking at your LinkedIn profile the most, executive wear would probably be the best outfit to really, assert that credibility and the years of experience that you do have. And, if you are in a more creative business, I do think that people are going to want to see that creativity reflected in your image.
Oh, you're only talking about headshot. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the complete attire.
Oh yeah, in attire too. If you're doing, full. When it comes to jeans, most Texas businessmen, I think it's like a Texas uniform, jeans and like nice pressed jeans, maybe, and a button-up shirt with a blazer, no tie. I kind of feel like as a Texas.
Yeah, no tie, no tie. What
Yeah.
I do my homework. I talk to somebody that's close to the person I'm going to meet with and ask. The rule is dress the way the person you're meeting with will dress.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, I love that. It's always tough, yeah, when you show up and someone's very casual in shorts and a t-shirt and you're dressed up and you're like, okay.
for me personally, I would rather err on being a little more dressed up than I need to be than being more casual than the other person. I would hate for them to think that I didn't take the moment seriously. So I'd rather overdress. If I'm going to make a mistake, I'd rather overdress than anything because I
Yeah.
want to see the person I'm meeting with, be it online, in person, or whatever. Actually does feel that I'm kind of giving them that consideration in that respect. So.
And so the last thing, and I hate that I didn't make it a slide, but it's very simple. And this is like, I, I was reminded of this not too long ago, and I was like embarrassed that I had not thought of it. But when you think back to the color wheel, before you have, say, you are like, okay, us as a brand, we're going to hire a photographer, whether it be for your product or for you as the business owner, or you're going to get headshots or general just portraits of yourself. Lifestyle portraits are far more popular now than ever because your you as the business owner or entrepreneur is part of the business brand. Now more than ever, you as the CEO are the brand in the business. So doing lifestyle photos and lifestyle photo shoots of you in your office doing things, talking with people, right? That's a photo shoot that is far more common now than it ever used to be. When you're going to do this, headed to the photo shoot, or not headed to the photo shoot, before the photo shoot, trying to figure out what to wear. This is when people really break down and are like, I'm going to cancel the photo shoot. I can't do it. When it comes to picking what to wear, the color wheel is going to be your best friend. If you know your background and say you're mostly going to be out in nature, you've got a yoga business and you want it to be really, natural and, airy, green's going to be a bunch of your background. You look on the other side, the opposite side of green on the color wheel, and that's what you wear as your clothes for the photo shoot. They're going to be most complementary and contrasting of each other. So if you decide to wear with something navy, look on the opposite side of a pretty extensive color wheel and try to find clothes that are on the opposite side of what you feel like your background may be.
Yeah, and that makes sense because obviously, and I put a link in the chat for you guys so you can jump in and see color wheels. But that makes sense because it's going to pop, right? It's that exact opposite. It's going to really make you stand out, and that's what you want in your pictures. And I go right back to this because I know we're all trying to survive online. I would also keep in mind that that contrast will help you when you're taking profile pictures or anything that you're doing online because we have to shrink it down. More and more people are actually accessing everything on their phone now. And so you want to make sure that have that nice contrast going because you're not always going to be on a desktop screen or whatever. Sometimes your Zoom call, the other person's got you on a tiny, tiny phone.
Much to my just absolute, it's my arch nemesis. The megapixels of our cameras are getting bigger and the screens are getting smaller. It's not infuriating at all, not at all. So, it really is wild. I'm like, I've got this 24 megapixel camera that you could blow this one image up to a billboard, but it will just be a little Instagram square. So,
I have a question about presenting yourself on, especially on social media. I see a lot of people branding themselves, and I see them in different poses online, and I think it's wonderful. They look good, but at what point do we um, know we're already looking a little bit more conceited? I mean, if it's a little too much. I mean, there's personal branding, but at what point do we look like it's you're all about you? What's the balance?
Great question. I think this is the part where I think a lot of people struggle because bragging on yourself feels uncomfortable in a lot of ways. So, kind of go against that grain. I think really it comes down to if you approach every post saying, what would someone else get from this? So if you're posting about how, you're going to be a speaker for an event, or you as the, community leader director of the Chamber of Commerce are working on putting together, a specific conference, or you're going to be featured in something, rather than just be like, hey, go check out my feature. It's giving back something. There's a reason that you would want to come to this event that we're putting on. There's a reason I was featured, is because I'm telling my story, and you too can be, you too can do anything you want. You too can be inspired to start your own business, or to go from being a volunteer for an organization to being the director of an organization, right? I think, those posts that consistently show, if it's about yourself, it's because what you do is mission driven, if that makes sense. Because it is tough to always post I, we, or no, excuse me, I, me. And for me personally, I've gotten around that by saying we. So when I'm posting something, rather than you need to check this out, it's kind of like, I had an opportunity to do this. We're really excited. So I choose to use the our, we're, even though I'm just talking about myself, or something I may be doing, that the lingo that people are seeing is the we, us, our.
And I think the one thing you pointed out that's good too, that we're talking about putting more pictures of ourselves online, the lifestyle pictures or whatever. I think, but the focus is saying, why am I taking this picture? So if I'm going to take this picture, it's because I'm inviting my, community or my customer, my ideal customer, into something that's going to be beneficial to them. I think that's a very useful. And it makes it not only does it make it more comfortable, I think it makes our content more useful. It actually makes us really consider what we're putting out there.
So, to your point, I'm so glad you mentioned this, because it totally triggered a thought in my brain. So, I did an experiment a year ago, and because I was trying to get more Instagram followers, because from a photography business standpoint, Instagram leads the charge in terms of bringing new clients in. And I did a challenge where I posted every day. I posted every single day, so that was the first. And every post that I made was a picture of me. That was tough, because I agree with you. It feels like, okay, that's a lot of me. My followers grew, my engagement grew, and I've never looked back. I was like, okay, the photos that I was posting, that I was taking of landscapes, or that I was taking of my coffee, but not me with my coffee, different things like that. The reality is, people do want to hear from you, they want to support you, and us telling ourselves anything different is a lie. They really do. And so I think what it came down to was, okay, if it's just a what I feel like is a great photo of me and that shows something that I'm passionate about, then it was in the caption and in the content. Is there something that I can say about a quote, a statistic, something about my industry that somebody didn't know about? If it's me, just a picture of me at my desk, it may be something about why I started the business, or something about my process and how I got to be there, that kind of thing. So I honestly, in my phone, I started a notepad, or a note, in your note section on your phone. I have an ongoing one where if I think of something randomly that's an interesting point, or an interesting quote, or an interesting word, I call it content. And that's where I just brain dump random things that I'll find throughout the day, that could be used for content down the road.
And that gives us ideas of later on, once you have that idea, you've got an idea of the picture you can take that you can upload to LinkedIn, which I think is where I would think that most of us here are going to want to interact more, because we are looking to further our businesses. Thank you. Thank you so much. We are
Well, Brian, this is Chito Colada.
Hi,
Yeah,
Sue.
this is so great. This is amazing that you discuss this with us, especially this time. In business, like, I've been in the business. So if you want to project yourself, it is how you project yourself, how to show yourself to anyone. So it's so important that you carry yourself properly, dress properly. But one thing that I didn't hear from you is like always make a smile.
Yes, absolutely. That's
Always make a smile. Yeah,
be
that's
kind and
important.
smile.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I have to jump on to 8 o'clock. So, uh,
Working it
but I
late. I love
appreciate
it.
very much. Thanks for your time. And I would like to reach out with you one time.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. The websites are on the bottom there. Otherwise, I'm on the socials. Um, and I was gonna say, Laura, too. I'll be around. I have one other document where I'm happy to show people the brand brief that I put together myself. Happy to go into that if we want to go over, but other than that, that's it for me.
Yeah, I think the people have some things that have got lined up. We're going to upload this to the YouTube channel, and we're going to have links. And we are going to make sure that we put some useful things for you on the website that are linked, that are related to this content today.
Yeah, absolutely. I can send you the slides if it helps.
Bri, this is wonderful. There's so many things I want to ask you about, not least of all social media. I need to. Most of our members are just we just love Facebook, and it actually has to do with Facebook in the Philippines, wherein they can reach out to the Philippines because that's where Facebook is investing a ton of money.
Oh yeah.
So that's why a lot of our community members are on Facebook. However, there are definite advantages to being on LinkedIn and Instagram. So I think if you don't mind, we would like to have a follow-up webinar at some point soon.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about the other things that we did not have time to talk about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could honestly, as much as I would love to talk about it, I would probably recommend you to a couple of people that I know how to crush Facebook, because other than that, I am not crushing it on Facebook personally. I post, I'm active. But I don't think I've hacked the algorithm on Facebook. So, but I absolutely agree that I think especially for international community building, it can be very, very powerful. So yeah, I would love to be involved. Don't get me wrong.
Guys, I want to make sure that you guys get to whatever thing that you've got lined up for tonight. You have this last slide that Bri is sharing with us. You can reach her on LinkedIn, connect with her on LinkedIn for sure, and you can see her on Instagram, Twitter, and you can also write to her at hello@bricrow.co. That's co, not com. Co. And yeah, you guys have any other follow-up questions, you know how to find obviously Rowena and me, and so we are happy to make sure that you get answers for you for follow-up questions.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hand it off to Rowena.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for coming. Bye. Bye, Emily.
Bye, Laura.
Thanks, Rowena.
Thank you, everyone.